Hi class. So I'm going to skate through this today and try to give you some insight into our discussions coming up this weekend. They'll go a lot faster if you listen to this audio, and it'll allow us to dig a little bit deeper into some of the topics that we'll be discussing. I apologize for having to miss Saturday. It probably doesn't break too many hearts, but I hate to get too far behind in lecture. It's hard to catch up. So for a quick review, we have the 4 Ps, which is also known as the marketing mix. And we've spent a lot of time on product, and we're going to spend a little bit more time on product as well. If you had to look at the 4 Ps individually, product, price, place, and promotion, the most important of the 4 is in fact product, because if you define your product improperly, or you have a product or a service that doesn't resonate with the public, then it's simply not going to be successful. So before you ever do a business plan or any kind of promotional plan, you want to clearly understand what your product is. And remember that context, in the context of the 3 questions that I said I like to ask. What's my product or service? Who's my customer? What's my value proposition? Okay, let's move on and look at product a little bit more closely. Again, the 4 Ps are also known as the marketing mix, and it is these 4 elements or aspects of marketing that we can use to construct a strategy. A product is anything that can be offered in the market for attention acquisition, whereas a service is similar, but a product is something that's concrete, whereas and lasts, something you're delivered at the time you purchase it, whereas a service is more abstract, can be experiential, and it's intangible in nature. It doesn't result in ownership. So most products run, if you think of it as a spectrum, from a wide spectrum where it's a pure product on one side and a pure service on another. There's very few things anymore that are a pure service or a pure product. As far as products are concerned, I generally use salt as an example, because it used to be that salt wasn't segmented. You kind of bought Morton salt and that was it. It's a product. It's not really segmented much, but it is now. It's been discovered as well as something that you can have sea salt, salt from the Great Salt Lake, salt from the Golan Heights or the Dead Sea or whatever. You can have salt from all over the place. Salt with minerals, salt without minerals, salt, salt, salt. On the same token, there's very few services that are pure services. But if you think of something like an accountant or a doctor, once upon a time, they were kind of pure services. They performed a function, and that was sort of the end of it. It wasn't something that you could keep. I guess if you had an appendectomy, you could keep that appendix, but it's not something that most people did. So they give you a service, an intangible service. But anymore, as consumers, we expect a dimension of service, play on words here. As part of that service, we expect it to be somewhat experiential. We expect to have a good experience. For most services, not a bad experience. So there's few pure services is what I'm getting at. And if you think of something like a resort, it's pretty much falls between, on the spectrum, falls between product and service. So if you think back on the slide that we have in the first lecture about what constitutes a product, we know that a product at its core is how it's usually defined by people. It's a store, it's a hair dryer, it's a hair curler, or it's a potato peeler. But again, in the desire to produce a product or service that resonates with the customers relative to the competition, we add different dimensions, some of which simply appeal to the eye as far as design, but also elements of it that are more functional. So in this particular instance, you have a potato peeler that is not just pretty to the eye, but it's got some functional elements such as a handle that won't slip in your hand, or it's got a design that makes it more difficult to hurt yourself, say those sorts of things. So design is an important element, and style is an important element of lots and lots of products or services. Think automobiles. Now, I'm loading this both as a YouTube as well as I'll upload the PowerPoint presentation itself, so you can watch it, or you can just go through the slides, because I haven't figured out yet how you can watch a video from inside a video. So if you, and I would encourage you to do so, it's a short one, choose to watch this video, please go to the PowerPoint presentation, that's sort of a standalone in the module. Another thing that defines a product are packaging and labels. Labels oftentimes, if it's an element like food, are required. They're perfunctory. They're required by the government to tell you what's inside, but that's not always the case. Sometimes labels will tell you about applications of the product or service to different situations to explain to you why it holds value for you. Packaging is extremely important. In fact, now we talk about the 4 Ps: product, price, place, promotion, people, process, and packaging, because packaging is really, really important anymore in defining oftentimes product quality to the consumer. If you think of Apple products, the design of their packages and even the interior of the boxes really creates almost an experience as you're going through it, and that's very, very intentional. So brand is also important. On this particular video, there's a video hyperlink behind PBS here, and if you watch the first 2 videos, they're really very good. We'll be watching probably some other ones of that in class. There's 6 segments. It's almost 90 minutes long, so there's 6 segments that are about anywhere from 12 to 15 minutes each. And the first 2 center around product service development, segmentation, and sort of brand development. Brand development is big in the second one. If you watch the video closely, the second and third actually, if you watch them closely, one of them has a shower scene with a young John Travolta where there's a bunch of guys advertising a soap product, I think. So product development is a growth strategy. You can grow your business in a number of different ways. You can expand your market, your market size. So you can start out in Portland, grow that to be the greater Portland metro area, go up into Seattle, south into Salem and Eugene, and then east to Boise. You can gradually grow your market, our regional marketplace. You can offer new products or services, or you can diversify into related services. So if you're a savings and loan, you may team up with an insurance company, or you may actually develop a branch for insurance that goes along with your auto loan, something like that. So you can diversify. Apple's done that. They've had both product line extensions, product development, as well as some diversification. If you're going to develop your product, there's two kinds of ways to grow your product itself other than just market share or marketplace expansion. You can grow your product line, or you can grow your brand or category extension. So we talked in class briefly, and I'll show you again this weekend, about Arm & Hammer. And they started out just as baking soda, and then they diversified into different categories. They had the same value proposition of smell and whitening, but they applied them to different categories like deodorant, cat food, soap, laundry soap, regular soap, and so on, toothpaste. And so those are different categories altogether, but within a particular product line, let's say Coca-Cola, the most common kind of product line extension is simply different flavors. So you have Diet Coke, Cherry Coke, Coke with caffeine, Coke without caffeine. I mean, you have these different versions of essentially the same product. Those are product line extensions as opposed to category. So here's another video. I believe it may be in the hyperlink might be in one of those words. I'm not sure. I don't see it, but a product introduction video. Now this is a line extension. This is Bare Aspirin. Aspirin is aspirin, and essentially they tell you that their items in the line extension are different. You have headache, backache, migraine. You have a prophylactic one, low dose for heart to prevent heart attacks. They have all these different forms of applications, and they actually bottle product that is intended to make you believe, at least, that it is specific to a particular ailment. But the fact of the matter is that the only difference in the product between these different applications, heart attacks, headache, really bad pain, whatever, is the actual dosage. The aspirin is aspirin. So if you have a migraine and it says that this one's good for migraine, it's just 500 milligrams instead of the average 320, I believe. And yeah, 320. If you take the low dose 81, that's 320 divided by 4, rounded off to 81. So it's a fourth of the dose. So in theory, you could take a regular sized aspirin, cut it into 4 pieces, and you'd have exactly the same product, essentially. Doesn't look as good after you've cut it into 4 pieces, but you'd have the same product that is sold in the 81 dose. Aspirin is aspirin. What they do is they segment based on need or functionality, intended application, and then they tell you it works for that particular thing. Here's another line extension. Well, they're category extensions with line extensions within specific categories. And so you take toothpaste as an example, or let's take laundry. You have different needs within your laundry needs, and so they develop different formulations for different things. So laundry with different forms, like one's a pellet, one's liquid, one's powder. Those are line extensions. And then within the total menu, there's different category extensions. So you're looking at both. You're looking at line extensions within category extensions. Pepsi is a great little example compared of product diversification, category diversification, compared to Coca-Cola in the 60s and 70s, when the baby boomers, my age, were younger and taken off. They were kind of duking it out, the two of them, for market share, and Coke slowly started winning. They didn't win by much, but slowly. And I may have told you this the first day, but so Pepsi changed its strategy, because the most profitable kind of soft drink segment are fountain sales, not sales in the supermarket in cans and stuff. It's fountain sales, because there's no packaging involved, no production, minimal production cost. It's all sugar, water, and carbonated, or sugar and carbonated water, syrup and carbonated water, actually. And so selling that in bulk to fast food outlets, which were growing. If you watched the McDonald's movie, it was really very good. I watched it the other night. But these soft drink companies were desperately trying to get into these burgeoning, growing fast food chains. And so because Coca-Cola was winning the battle in the supermarket, they started to be the one of choice, because customers tend to ask, do you have Pepsi or do you have Coke? And most of them started asking for Coke. So what Pepsi did is they did two things. They started buying up the fast food restaurants. They bought up eventually A&W, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and they simply, they did two things. They owned the restaurants, and of course those restaurants sell Pepsi. Eventually, in the early 2000s, or mid-90s to early 2000s, I'm not sure when, they peeled off all those restaurants into a separate company called Yum Brands, and just started pushing them to expand in different parts of the world, primarily Asia. Yum Brands has a great Asian ring to it. So you have chains like Kentucky Fried Chicken that are actually the fastest growing fast food chain in China. And so that's ran as a separate company now, aside from Pepsi, but of course they still require that those chains sell Pepsi. The other thing they do is they got into snacks. They own Frito-Lay, and nothing goes better with a really sweet, fattening soda drink than some potato chips. Okay, one of the things we want to do, now this, I'm going to transition now out of product development, which is really about product line development and category development, product line extension, category development, and talk briefly about developing strategy. So one of the things that we talk about in this and 321 as well in the management class, it's one of the things that you should take away. Well, the top 10 things you should take away from college as a business major. What is a SWOT analysis? And it basically is an environmental analysis where you look at the strengths, weaknesses of the company and the opportunities and threats that exist in the marketplace. And whether you're doing a marketing plan or whether you're doing a business plan, you would essentially always do a SWOT analysis. That's why you find it in both disciplines. In a management class, you're looking really big picture. In marketing class, you would be looking at the SWOT analysis a little more narrowly. It's still inside, outside review for the company, but you're looking at it from a marketing perspective. So your book talks about it. Strengths and weaknesses are micro elements of the environment, whereas macro is opportunities and threats. And I'll let you read these for further individual elements that you would typically look for. Here's another one, a different way to lay it out. And you could have sub-items included in all of these so that you get a far greater level of detail. This is actually a good outline. Watch this video for a discussion around a SWOT analysis. Mission statement, I'm not going to spend much time on a mission statement, but what a mission statement does, it's generally a short paragraph, and it's a statement of what the organization's purpose is and what it wants to accomplish in the larger environment. So it's general in nature, and you should think of them as inspirational. They're different than objectives. And objectives and goals are a lower level to the mission. They relate back to the mission. The goals are some broad inspirational statements as well that the company wants to achieve. So a mission statement might be, and this isn't necessarily a good one, we want to bring gourmet ice cream to as many people in the world as possible. So that might be a mission. And the goal would be, we want to produce the best. It's a little more specific. We want to produce ice cream that is available to everyone anytime they want, anywhere they want. Our gourmet ice cream. And then the objectives start and tactics and strategies and tactics start to lay out how you're going to realize or actualize the goals. And we'll talk about this in class and try to come up with some better examples, because I'm thinking off the top of my head. But they go from really broad level to more and more specific. So objectives are always quantified, and they're generally stated in terms of marketing terms like market share. We're going to grow market share by 20%, or we're going to grow our unit sales by 5%, or we're going to grow our margins by 40%. And so it's margins, market share, unit sales, dollar sales, customer awareness, increased customer satisfaction by X amount, and they're always quantified. And I think we watched this in marketing class. If you didn't watch it in marketing, you should watch it, because it really, when you're thinking about opportunities and from a global context, this is really a good one to watch. And so marketing metrics are things that you, and we'll talk more, by the way, about strategies and tactics and how they relate to objectives and actualizing those objectives. I go over it briefly in marketing. It's more of a philosophy in management class, so we'll spend more time on it there. But management by objective is a common management kind of tool and philosophy that again is worth understanding before you leave college. But they tie again, they're, if you say you're going to grow sales by by 10% for the year, you might set up metrics like what are my monthly what's my monthly progress or my weekly progress or my quarterly progress in achieving those annual objectives that I've specified. And what other things can I look at? Can I look at an improvement in service in my employees, by my employees, and more higher level of satisfaction on both their part and the customer's part? What are your metrics for measuring the objectives that you've set out to do? Finally, wow, we're at 25 minutes. So finally, we want to be aware of some of the very general management tools that we utilize in the marketplace. And one of the things that was a tool that was developed in the 70s by the Boston Consulting Group is called the Boston Matrix. The Boston Consulting Group is still around. They're very big, and the Boston Matrix is similar to the SWOT analysis in that it's used by many businesses to categorize their product menu and to figure out what's working, what isn't, and why not, why it's working, why it isn't. And so they came up with this matrix that divides products along two constructs or two axes. Those with high market growth potential, and this is within your portfolio, those that you're looking at in your existing portfolio or that you could add that are a fit with your business, and those that you have low to high market share. In some cases you might have very low market share, but it's something that you think you can gain market share. So these four categories are cash cows, rising stars, problem children, and dogs, and we might look at them again in class. But where you want to get to are products that are cash cows. And if you think in terms of a grocery store, there are certain things within their product mix that are cash cows, like coffee and eggs and other dairy products. Certain kinds of vegetables. Some vegetables are cash cows, I'm sure, like potatoes and tomatoes, and some are specialty items almost, like a bok choy and something like that. You have products. At one point, for Apple, the iPhone was a rising star. It still is, but it's becoming a cash cow, something that it can count on to kick out dollars every quarter, even though they're not necessarily selling a bunch of new units, because they've designed the thing to generate revenues from related sources. So like I said in class, they get money from the carriers, they get money for the apps, they get money for all kinds of things. It's becoming a cash cow. Creates revenue even when they're not selling new units. And then you've got problem children where there's a high market growth, but for whatever reason you're not participating in it very well. So one of the problems with the Boston Matrix is you put these things into the matrix, but especially for certain categories like dogs and problem children, you can put it in a category, but that doesn't necessarily tell you why it's in that category. I mean, a product can be a problem child because not because there's necessarily anything wrong with the product itself, although that might be the case, but it may be your product manager that's in charge of it, or the product management team. It may be your marketing, it may be the name, it can be all kinds of things. But if you just look at it by itself and say, well, this is a problem child, we've been at this too long, I'm ditching it, and that may be true for dogs as well. You want to know before you dump it, which may well be the thing to do in many cases, but you want to have a really good idea what's wrong and why you can't necessarily fix it before you dump it. So rising stars, the iPhone, like I said, it was one of those. So was their iPad, so was their iPod. All those things are kind of aging now, actually, and can very well. They don't all become a cash cow the like the iPhone. Some of them just become something that doesn't sell that many units anymore, like the iPod. You know, that was a hot item. That really got them going. They monetized, trying to think of that service on the web where you could get songs for free once upon a time. You know, it was Apple that came along and monetized that opportunity. And they still sell a lot of songs. I mean, they get that revenue, but it really comes more, I would guess, from the iPhone than it does from the iPod anymore. Okay, that's the end of this lecture. Might have one more, but I will see you on Sunday.